Lily Aldrin is a bit of a contentious character on How I Met Your Mother. There are some people who absolutely despise her, and there are some people who absolutely love her and are staunch Lily defenders. And I think that I'm somewhat in the middle. I have developed my own fan theory on Lily, and every time I have a fan theory video, I get a lot of flack for it. So this time I brought receipts. I will try to defend my position as much as I can. And I'm here to say that I think that Lily used to be quite a bit like Barney before we meet her on the show. So in essence, her morality was more skewed, and that has been informed by her childhood. I guess what I mean to say is that perhaps Lily was a bit of a reformed criminal. And I just want to make it clear that this is not a Lily bashing video, nor is it a Lily defense video. So if you came here for either one of these things, you won't find it here. And when it comes to these characters, I think that some grace should be afforded to the writers. So I know that in the beginning, the writers didn't know how long the show was going to last. They didn't know all the background of all the characters. And so they were developing the characters as they were going forward with the show. There may be some inconsistencies, some continuity errors when it comes to the development of these characters. And we have to be, I guess, aware of the fact that we can't have perfection when it comes to the design of a character. Not everything is fully formed from the beginning. But based on what we have, I think that it's possible to create a framework of understanding some of these characters. And I think that the background of these characters can provide us some insight into who these characters are. So let's start from the beginning. Lily Aldrin grew up in Park Slope, Brooklyn, and she has the last name Aldrin because originally they wanted to have Buzz Aldrin be her grandfather. Unfortunately, they couldn't get Buzz Aldrin to come on the show. But besides that, we know that her parents separated for a long period of time in 1985 when Lily was 7 years old. And according to Ted, she developed trust issues for a long period of time because of that. We also know that her dad caught her mom with a squash player.
She doesn't talk about it much, but this thing with her dad causes her a lot of pain.
Lily's father is Mickey, and Mickey was a deadbeat for most of Lily's life. He wasn't there for her. It caused her a tremendous amount of pain, and the root of it is the fact that he completely neglected her. So after preschool, he became a terrible father. So before preschool, we see that he was actually a great dad, and then as soon as she went off to school, he discovered gambling, and he would go to the racetrack, and it got to the point where he couldn't even remember her birthday.
When's your birthday?
Today.
And he would just not pay attention to her. So whenever she had a gymnastics meet, whenever she had a ballet recital, he was never there. And when she would look to him for comfort, he would instead terrorize her.
Here, come play Daddy's new game. There's a clown demon under the bed.
And we see this when she has her tonsil surgery. So when she's having her tonsil surgery and she's terrified, Mickey is just giving her a bunch of information to make her worse.
Anything can happen. You could bleed to death. You could have your jaw removed due to infection. And the anesthesia could suddenly just stop working.
And it gets to the point that as a little girl, she lies and pretends that she doesn't know him so that he gets kicked out, which seems like she developed manipulation as a coping strategy. And we also see the fact that Mickey is proud of Lily for that type of behavior.
I woke up in a dumpster of medical waste, and I couldn't have been prouder.
And we know that in high school, he missed her high school graduation and he stole her babysitting money for his business venture of creating games.
Later, she discovers her babysitting money has been spent on a board game called Who Stole the Babysitting Money?
And in the present day, Mickey doesn't seem to be much better. So at one point, Mickey calls Lily to bail him out of jail because he's facing prison time for the fact that he hasn't paid taxes for the last 25 years. Then on Thanksgiving, Marshall invites Mickey because he wants Lily and Mickey to reconcile. And we find out that Lily hasn't spoken to Mickey for 3 years because for her, it's very painful.
Marshall, that man broke my heart every single day for 20 years.
And then at Thanksgiving, when Lily storms off because she doesn't want to talk to her dad, Mickey doesn't want to go after her. He decides to go and play his board game, and then he ruins Thanksgiving dinner. So we see that he continues to kind of disregard her feelings in the present day. We also find out that Mickey moved back in with his parents, so Lily's grandparents, and Lily's grandfather had to go out of retirement, so her grandparents couldn't move to Florida, they couldn't retire, they had to go back to work because they had another mouth to feed because it's Mickey. And Mickey was kicked out of his place because he wasn't paying rent. Then we see Mickey trying to make amends, so he moves into the house that Lily and Marshall moved into with the attempt to help them, but instead he just becomes a nuisance and he makes things worse. Then he puts a whole bunch of bees in the basement during a party that they're having. And then later on, when Lily and Marshall move out, Mickey again comes to their apartment door and we find out that he burned down his own house. So it turns out that Mickey is just a big troublemaker. And towards the end, we do see that Mickey has growth and he actually becomes a really good caretaker for baby Marvin. But still, there's so much that happens with Mickey beforehand. And we see that even as an adult, he continues to cause trouble for Lily. Then we have Lily's mom, Janice, who we know a lot less about, but we do get to meet her. We meet her at the bridal party, and she does come off as a very sweet woman. And we also know that Marshall killed her cat, R.I.P. Whiskers. And we kind of get the sense that Lily has a bit of a strained relationship with her mom. She references the fact that her and her mom fight, which leads Lily to shop compulsively.
Oh, I just had a huge fight with my mother. She doesn't understand me at all.
And in the episode with Gael, when Lily is releasing a lot of tension, she says,
I forgive you, Mom.
We also know that her mom taught Lily to be a feminist and very independent. So when Lily was little, her mom didn't want to get her an easy bake oven and she gave her a Lego set instead because she didn't want her to conform to traditional gender norms. And I think that we kind of see this in Lily's character. So when we find out that Lily has her own apartment, Robin asks, why would you have your own apartment? And Lily says that she wanted to keep her independence. We also know that Lily wanted to keep her last name after she got married, which was becoming a lot more common in the early 2000s. But we also see that Lily butts heads with the Erickson family and with Marshall's mom. And a part of it could be the fact that his family is a lot more traditional. So their expectation is that Lily is going to move to St. Cloud, Minnesota. She's going to have a ton of babies. She's going to raise them. She's going to have the traditional values that his family has. And we see that there's a very stark contrast with how Lily was raised and how Marshall was raised. Marshall, out of everyone in the group, seems to have the most stable home. He grew up with two loving parents who continued to love each other. He grew up with two brothers who maybe were not the nicest to him, but they deep down loved each other, and it was a very cohesive, loving family. And Lily's upbringing was very different from that. So Lily grew up being basically completely neglected. One parent who was not available because they were working two jobs, and the other parent who was physically around but who made Lily feel worse. And so she was ultimately on her own. She was an only child, and she developed manipulation strategies as a coping mechanism. And at the same time, she was taught that she has to be independent, that she has to be on her own. And so we see her kind of grow up pursuing a very bohemian lifestyle, that she wants to travel, she wants to see the world, she has a wild persona to her. We find out that out of the five main characters, Lily was the biggest badass. So as a teenager, Lily was rough around the edges. She was basically a little teenage criminal. So she didn't care about the law. She had no regard for authority. She was drinking in public. She was a bully to other people. She bullied Scooter. And it was so bad that even in the present day, little kids are afraid of her. And look, all things considered, she wasn't an absolute criminal. All these things are relatively minor. It's not like she was skinning people alive, but out of the main five, she was definitely the roughest of the group. And we also know she was a bit of a wild child, so she would sneak into clubs when she was 17. And we see that by the time she gets to college, her behavior kind of continued.
I heard that in college you flashed a campus tour group on a dare.
Once on a dare. The other times were just for fun.
And from her interaction with Michelle, we kind of get a bit of her personality for a period of time when she was in high school, which could be potentially inconsistent with how she's presented as a teenager later on. So now let's take a look at Lily in the present. When we see Lily on the show, it seems like she's taken on a much softer persona, and it's very different from the personality that she had when she was a teenager. So she's a bit more mature and she's a bit softer, but we do see that wild side come out sometimes. So we know that she's very sexually expressive, a lot more than Marshall, and she does express her attraction to people and to women, namely Robin, but to other women as well. When her and Marshall are not doing it, Lily is the one who's very, very frustrated. And when Marshall puts on the leather cuff, she becomes very attracted to him because he's this bad boy to her now, and she finds that very appealing, which is an interesting contrast to Marshall. When Lily puts on the mom jeans, that's what he finds attractive. And that gives us insight into both of their personalities. So she's drawn to the darker side, more of a bad boy, and he loves the more traditional mom type based on his upbringing. And it's also kind of funny because we also know that Lily was attracted to Scooter because he looked a little like Kurt Cobain, which made me think of the leather bracelet that Marshall was wearing. Not that Kurt Cobain was wearing leather bracelets, but it's this idea of a rocker, bad boy type of guy. We also see on the show that Lily deep down has this drive for independence and for finding out who she is. And that could also be explained through the ending of season 1, how she needed to find and discover herself because she didn't expect her life to plan out the way that it did. I'm not here to rehash that particular argument or to prove a point as to who was right and who was wrong, just to understand better where Lily comes from and where those inclinations may have come from. And I kind of get this impression that Lily was expecting to have all these experiences in college, or that's how she expected to grow up based on her upbringing. And she wasn't expecting to find Marshall and to fall in love that early. And the fact that she stayed with him for so long is really what made her grow and change. That by the time that we see her, she seems to be quite different from her teenage self because of her relationship with Marshall. That when she's with Marshall, she has adopted this type of a persona that makes her want to be more of a calm, stable presence that makes her want to be a more mature person. But despite that, we do see that on the show, she still has a lot of those old personalities that come out.
Are you really gonna do that? That's so immature.
You can be slapped by Commissioner.
Oh, I love it. What are my powers?
So while she wants to be a mature adult, and that's the new persona that she has taken on, we see that she's kind of just like the rest of the group. She's still just as immature and she's not ready for that step. So for example, when she invites her coworkers for a wine tasting and Marshall sneaks out to go to a club, Lily then sneaks out to go to a club and to chase him down. And we see that she's also bored at the party and that she spends her time binge drinking, and that's why she doesn't quite fit in with this mature, older crowd. We also see that when Lily and Marshall decide to go to a bed and breakfast for their anniversary, they both decide to stay home because that's not their thing. So I think that with Lily, what we see on screen is someone who's been working to become a different type of person, but who has still a lot of work to do to sort of shed some of the old personality traits that she has developed while she was growing up. And I want to focus a little bit on some of Lily's antisocial personality traits, starting with the stealing. We first see Lily stealing in season 2 when she's at Ted's job and she takes Hammond Brothers baseball, and she calls this Aldrin justice because that's what she does in her classroom. And I think this is one of those episodes where I feel like it's kind of inconsistent a little bit because as we find out later on the show, Lily likes to steal. That's something that she's been doing when she was in college, probably even earlier on. And we see that she gets a kick out of it. And we see that she still kind of does it in the future, but it's never called Aldrin justice in the future. And I think that that's an aspect that I think the show hasn't fully formed when it comes to her character, that this justification of stealing to prove a lesson, it almost feels like it's a justification that perhaps Lily created because she has an inclination to steal, but because she's taken on this new persona of being a better moral person, that she then has to provide a justification for the behavior that she can't control and can't explain. So we see on the show that she stole the captain's ashtray in the later seasons. She also wanted to take her stolen handbags to Italy.
Didn't you shoplift these in your 20s?
Yes, and I get very nostalgic for that time. You get older, you have kids, you stop stealing. It's sad.
And she also steals a very expensive bottle of Glen McKenna, which is like $600. And then she tells Ted that he could steal a bottle as well. Essentially, I kind of have two issues with the Aldrin Justice plotline. One is the justification because it doesn't come up again, and because we find out that Lily kind of enjoys the stealing. And I think it would have been fine and consistent with her character if that's an urge that she kind of has. I'm not here to say that she was compulsively stealing all the time, but that she kind of had a knack for it. And so I feel like the justification felt kind of odd, but it does seem like they were still trying to develop her character. And I think the other element is the fact that they were using this justification to demonstrate the fact that Lily loves teaching. And so she goes back to teaching kindergarten because that's where she feels most at home. It's what she enjoys the most, and that's where her tactics work the most. But I feel like through the rest of the show, you kind of get this impression, or at least I did, that Lily doesn't really love being a kindergarten teacher. I mean, she does say that expressly out loud a few times, that she's not happy in that role.
I am just a kindergarten teacher.
And when she's in the classroom, it doesn't seem like she's someone who's just well suited to be a kindergarten teacher. It just doesn't seem like her personality fits it, and she doesn't seem to enjoy it that much. So it just seems like the only episode where her interest in kindergarten teaching is shown, and it's the only episode where the justification is provided. So I feel like it does feel a little inconsistent with her character. And so this takes me to my next point, which is the credit card debt. And I really don't like this plot line. There's just so many reasons. And I'm not saying this because I'm trying to defend Lily necessarily, but it just feels inconsistent with her character. So first of all, we didn't really get any hints as to the fact that Lily had a spending problem before. We don't see her trying to buy expensive things. And okay, I also am not the best at understanding brands and when something's a designer and when something's super expensive. So perhaps she was wearing super expensive things early on that you could tell and that I just couldn't. But through season 1, I mean, she does dress fashionably and nicely throughout the show, but you could dress fashionably and nicely without spending a lot of money. I mean, as far as I can tell, those things could have come from H&M. So I guess in the first season, we don't get any hints that Lily likes expensive things and that she likes to overspend. And even in the wedding dress episode where she ruins the wedding dress and she's concerned about the price tag, there's no indication that she would try to put it on her credit cards. It looks like she does buy relatively affordable things. So it kind of seems like a surprise when they bring up this credit card debt, not to mention the fact that it's brought up many times that Lily can't keep a secret. And so it seems really, really terrible that she keeps this particular secret, but she can't keep any others. So it seems like an inconsistency. And we also know that she and Marshall share everything with each other, that they just tell each other what they ate for lunch. And so this also seems very really harsh, on the writer's perspective. I think this is where I want to bash the writers a little bit because there are so many things that they establish about her character that feels inconsistent with this credit card debt plot line. And it really feels like the plot line was used to move the plot forward. And I also know that, look, I mean, if it's there, we could also make it consistent with her character that, we know that Mickey has a gambling problem and he has an addictive personality. And that could also translate into Lily having somewhat of an addictive personality and the need for compulsive shopping. We could also translate it to the fact that she really started to overspend later when she broke up with Marshall, when she went off to San Francisco. And that's when the spending really started and got a lot more expensive, and she racked up that debt after the breakup, and that kind of continued as a coping mechanism. Or we could also see it as the fact that because she's trying to be a better, more moral person and she stopped stealing, and because she stopped, she needed to sort of continue the behavior of trying to acquire stuff. And so it was a compensation for not stealing. Although at the same time, I kind of see it as if she's the kind of person who would steal, why would she use the credit cards? She could just swipe stuff if she really wanted to. Why spend all that money? So anyway, ultimately, I don't like this plot line at all. I know that it's just, for me, I feel like out of all the things that she's done, even though I think that she's done some things that are worse, the credit card debt plotline bothers me the worst because it just feels so grossly inconsistent with everything else that's been presented. Not to mention the fact that going forward, it's not brought up. So when Lily and Marshall are having the argument about the NRDC and she wants him to be an environmental lawyer, Marshall says, but we have a mortgage.
But we have a mortgage and we're trying to have kids.
So he doesn't bring up any other debt, which seems to suggest that all that debt has been paid off. And so I feel like naturally the debt would be brought up in the argument, but it seems like it's been erased. Like it's been used for those few specific episodes and then it's just kind of moved forward and never discussed again. But anyway, that's my qualm. Moving on.
Lily is a diabolical puppet master, subtly manipulating every situation to get exactly what she wants. She's pure evil, Marshall. You got a good one there. Hang on to her.
On the show, we see that Lily has some manipulative, diabolical behavior, and some of it is used for good or for the good of the group, and some of it is not. The biggest example is when she sabotages Ted's relationships, which I think was wrong on her part, even though her intention was good. She was trying to protect Ted, but that still does not give her the right to, control his relationships. The best thing to do is to talk to your friend honestly, to share your concerns if you're actually worried. It's not good to try to control the situation, but she does learn her lesson. So at the end of it, she apologizes and she decides that she's never going to do that again. And when Marshall and Ted try to break up Robin and Barney, and they try to do it on their own, and they tried to enlist Lily to help them, Lily says no, she's retired, she's not doing this anymore.
Forget it.
I'm retired. I'm out of the game.
And she tells them that they're on their own. And then when they start screwing up, she decides that she's going to come out of retirement one more time because they made the situation worse. But it does seem like she was trying to pull herself out of that type of behavior. She's trying to grow as a person and not regress back to the person that she was. Apart from sabotaging Ted's relationships, we also see some other behavior that is kind of controlling. So for example, we know that Lily kind of created the scenario where she meets Marshall. We find out that she damaged her radio and she then knocked on every single door in the dorm in order to find Marshall because she really wanted to meet him. And we also see this when she tries to get Robin to make new female friends, but then she gets worried about that and upset and she tries to chase the new girl away. And Robin then tells her, "This is why I'm friends with just you. All I need is you because you're a little out there."
That's why I only need you. 'Cause you're a psycho.
Then we see some really diabolical behavior. One of my favorites is when she recreates The Godfather in the classroom. Of course, if this was real life, it'd be atrocious, but I thought it was really funny on the show, which again goes to show that she's kind of a criminal mastermind. I mean, she takes a stuffed head of a horse and she puts it in a kid's sleeping bag. That is diabolical. And then when it comes to the group and when her skills actually come in super handy is that she comes up with the plan to steal the lion head off the Arcadian. So in the moment when the whole group gives up, when they think that, okay, there's no more building, we cannot build the G&B building, it's done, let's buy a bar, and everyone's just like, okay, let's move on from this, Lily is the one who's like, no, we're gonna sit down, we're gonna figure something out. And Marshall then points out the fact that if anyone can figure this out, it's Lily because she has that mind, and she does come up with a very clever plan, and it's because of that they're able to get the G&B building built. She has these skills that could be put to really good use when it comes to the group and when it comes to Marshall and Lily's relationship because he's overly nice. Apart from that, there are a few other examples. So for example, when Barney is trying to manipulate the group with the ducky tie and trying to see Lily's boobs, Lily is the first one to catch on to the fact that this is a con. So I feel like between Barney and Lily, they're able to read each other better because I think that Lily was a bit more like Barney in the past. And so she kind of understands him, which is also another way to perhaps explain why they're friends. I mean, Lily is very much disgusted with what Barney does, but despite that, they're still friends. And I think one possible justification for that is the fact that she sees the old her in him and that perhaps she's more forgiving because she has an understanding of how people can grow and change and become better over time. And Barney, I think, likes Lily a lot because he sees himself in her. If I had to conclude with anything, I would say that Lily has had significant growth as a character, but all of that growth happened before we even see her. And I feel like it's worthwhile to look at her through that lens that yes, perhaps she does some things that are terrible in the show and it doesn't justify it. So people's past childhoods and people's upbringing should never be a justification for their behavior in the present. But at the same time, I think it's worth understanding where someone comes from. And I think it's interesting to look at Lily, how she is in the present to how she was in the past. And if we had a prequel show, I feel like it'd be a really interesting contrast with watching how Lily grew up and the person that she became. And she might not be fully reformed because growth takes time, but I think that with enough time, it's possible for a person to truly change and to get rid of the aspects of themselves that they don't identify with anymore. So I hope this didn't come out as a Lily bashing video. I like Lily as a character, actually. I think that she's just as complex and complicated as the rest of the characters. I don't think she's either good or bad. She does a lot of bad things, she does a lot of good things, and together she's a complex character. And perhaps I could also be biased because I first saw Buffy and I loved Buffy, and to me, Allison Hannigan will always be Willow. And so perhaps because of that, I see bits of that in Lily's character. But ultimately, I think that she's just a morally perhaps neutral character that has darker aspects to her personality, which I think is interesting. And I think that sometimes perhaps the show went a little bit of a different direction with her sometimes that felt inconsistent. But overall, I feel like she has an interesting background, and I feel like the background kind of informs who she is in the present. So I guess that's all I really have. I would love to know everyone's thoughts, and please let me know what else I should cover. I'm thinking of covering all the parents and doing a comprehensive video as people suggested. That could be a lot of fun. So thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.